Here's an oxymoron for you. These are things you're not allowed to do in the park. One of them, no animals. So you can't have no animals, which means you must have an animal or you're breaking the law. Things like that wouldn't happen if you let me write the rule book, but almost no one ever asked me to do stuff like that. I don't get it. Okay, today's video is from a viewer. There was a comment to a video months ago, and a viewer asked a bunch of questions, and I always say, if I think I could turn it into a video, I will. I'll try. So I think I could turn this comment into a video. First, how did I learn poker? Mostly TV and experience. So it was on ESPN a lot. It was on, I think the WPT was on the Travel Channel, so you could just watch it and see what the guys were doing, you know, with the whole card cameras. That was a big help. I was very, very bad at home games when we first started. I remember losing the first two $5 buy-in freeze-out tournaments. I lost the first two on back-to-back Fridays, and I went into a panic because I was down $10, and like, I couldn't just lose $5 every week for the rest of my life. So I had to get better. I was very bad at first. I didn't start winning like week 3 or anything. It took a while, but I practiced. Play money games on full tilt helped. I played a lot more on tilt than Poker Stars, and I would do this. This might seem odd. It helped me a lot. I would sit in the living room a lot of nights, and when I was in high school, and just deal out like 9 hands of no limit hold'em. So first guy is the small blind, second hand is the big blind. Look at the third player's cards, flip them up. What would I do if I had these cards under the gun? And whatever that action was, then go to the next hand. If I were player 4's cards, and based on what under the gun had just done, what would I do with these cards in this spot? And I would play every hand, like every player, every hand, until the hand was done, and I would just shuffle and deal again, and I would do that for hours. And it was a way for me to get reps in. Because home games weren't that long, and it was like once a week maximum, so that and play money were a way to get a lot of hands in and get some reps in. 2+2 was also a great resource before it turned into the nonsense cesspool that it is. Up through like 2014, I was a pretty active participant in the LLSNL subforum, live low stakes no limit. So you could post a hand, people would read it, comment, give advice. Other people would post their hands, you could say what you would do. That was pretty good. I felt like the only thing that would have made it better was saying what city you were playing in, because after I moved from Wisconsin, I realized poker across cities, Wisconsin and then comparing it to Vegas, were way different. I thought Vegas was going to be even better, and it wasn't. So we never really seemed to include the cities, but we gave descriptions about the other players, how we were probably perceived by the other players, things that had been happening that night at the table. So we got a pretty good sense of what was going on, and you could give some good advice, and that was a good way in actual live hands to like get some more reps in. And then around, I don't know, I guess it was like 2013, 14, 15, it just turned into absolute nonsense. I remember I would get infraction points occasionally for like calling someone a moron, which, I don't know, there's a lot worse things that go on in the world, but I would get infractions, and I think to this day I'm still 1 infraction away from a lifetime ban. But I remember a guy sent me a death threat, and I don't think he got any infraction points. It seemed like the people who weren't gonna make it in poker just got very jaded and mad, but also wouldn't leave the forum and just like choose to do something else with their time. And yeah, a guy said if he ever saw me, he would treat me like any other varmint running across his backyard, like he knows how to handle a gun. I mean, he said if he ever saw me, he would shoot me, and I don't think the moderators cared and gave him any infraction points. But it was around that time it just really started going downhill. But through 2014, that was a great resource. Never had a formal coach. The guy who was in part 4 of the road trip video from Vegas back to New York, he took poker more seriously than me, and he was better for a very long time. So we would talk in high school about poker, and we would IM once we went to different colleges before Black Friday happened. So that was not a formal like coach-student deal, but it was probably the closest thing I ever had to something like that. So I would say no coaching, but I did have like a friend who was taking poker just as seriously as I was, and who was better than me. Studying has evolved over the years for me. It used to be that I kept my own hand histories from live poker all the time. I did that for like a few years straight, and then on and off for a while, and it's been a while since I've done that. But I used to do that. I used to also really utilize my drive back from the casino in Milwaukee. So it was like 80 miles back to my apartment, and I would use that time to think about hands that I had played that night. So I thought about them while I played, then like the rest of the session, then the drive home, and then I would think about them when I was typing them in for my original hand history in Word. And it was like a lot of times I got to think over the same hands, and that was a really good process for me back then. Now, I don't do so much away from the table. For one, I'm not trying to improve that much. Also, I don't know, a lot of the spots happen. Like, they've happened many times. I remember a hand in Potawatomi that I misplayed the flop. I played it a little too aggressively, but I quickly realized how to better play it. And I've been waiting about 10 years for that exact scenario to happen again, and it hasn't. So a lot of the scenarios are common, and you want to get them right because they add up, but the like real highlight film, really rare hands just don't come into play all that much. So a lot of my study is at the table. I think about the hand while I played it, right after I played it, like for the rest of the session. You also, for the rest of the session, get to see what your opponent does. Like, your opponent might have just sat at the table. So 2 hours after the hand, well, now you've seen him do other things for 2 hours, and that could help you decide what he was doing in the hand you guys played early on. So a lot of it happens during the session, and not so much happens afterwards anymore. And this viewer's last question was favorite players. I will mention two for much different reasons. One, Barry Greenstein. Due to longevity, I think he's still playing a 75-150 mixed game in California. If you listen to his, I think it was 3 interviews with Joe Ingram, each of them about 4 hours, there was some great information, there was some very entertaining information, and it's like a great history of his life in poker. So I have a lot of respect for him, mostly for starting his poker career when it was unheard of to do it. It's like easier now when other people are doing it and it's not insane and there are like people to watch and try to imitate. Doing it like 50 years ago was a much taller task, because like there was no one to talk about with it. There was no one else like doing it. There wasn't like TV and the internet like there is now. So give a lot of respect to Barry Greenstein for starting when he did and for still being in the game. And Tony G, gotta love Tony G. People who are like hated by other players, by other fans, they're very entertaining for their game. Professional sports, poker. So I love it. I love when the hand against Ralph Perry. And last year I was playing at Aria with Ralph Perry's wife, and we were talking about that hand. I love that 5-outer he hit on Khan. I love when he got heads up with Surrender Sunar, even though he lost that, he came in second. When he tricked Helmuth into thinking he hadn't looked at his hand when he did, and he unknowingly roped Hashem into helping him out with that Khan. All those moments were great. I watch them on YouTube all the time. A few of them I still listen to. I listen to them in my car. So I put him on a CD and I could listen to him in the car. So those moments are awesome, and Tony G is another favorite of mine.
Yeah, I got it at the stadium.